Let's talk about money, not in a financial advisor spreadsheet or have you considered your portfolio diversification kind of way, but in a real way. Because if you're living on a fixed income, whether that's a pension, CPP, Social Security, or some combination of all of the above, you already know that it comes with a very particular feeling. Once a month, the deposits land in your account and you look at them and you think, okay, that's what I have. That's it. We'll make it work. And then the payments start coming out one after the other until you say, that's what I have. That's it. How can I make it work? Today, I want to talk about what that's actually like, the practical side, the emotional side, and the habits that have genuinely helped me. Hi, I'm Susan, and welcome to the channel. And I want to be upfront with you because I do think honesty matters. Strangely enough, I'm in a more comfortable position at this time in my life than I ever was before during all of those working years. And I'm grateful for that every single day. But that certainly wasn't always the case. It actually wasn't ever the case. From the time I was 10 or 11, I had little farm or babysitting jobs that enabled me to have candy or movie money. Later, I was a student cashier at a Canadian Tire store during high school and college, and I worked at the same Canadian Tire store for a few years once I finished college. And then I went on to my various IT jobs, which we'll call my career, for 40 years, although it's a whole other video to discuss those jobs and how I felt about them. Suffice it to say, it wasn't my love of technology or computers that led me to IT. It was my need for a paycheck, plain and simple. Whether I happened to be in either of my two marriages and I was in a two-income household, or whether I was on my own, there were some tight years where financial mistakes were made and lessons were learned. And those lessons I learned during those harder years, I think they're what really help me now. So whether your monthly amount feels tight or comfortable or somewhere in between, I think some of this might resonate. The first thing nobody really prepares you for is how different a fixed income feels. Even if the dollar amount is perfectly fine, when you're working and you're younger, there's a sense, even if it's an illusion, that you can always do a little more, pick up extra hours, take on a project. Find a way to bring a little more in if you need to. Those options are much more limited in retirement. Now, you may be thinking that my YouTube income is a second income, and well, yes, it is. Last year I earned $4,500 Canadian from my YouTube channel. But a good portion of that amount was due to a couple of viral videos, which was amazing, but I don't see that happening this year. So viral videos aside, I usually earn about $300 a month from YouTube, which I do squirrel away for a rainy day or for taxes. I really can't count it as income because with YouTube being as fickle as it is, nothing is guaranteed. I pretty much expect nothing. And when a payment ends up in my account, it's a happy surprise. Here's the practical reality of living on one monthly deposit. You have to think in terms of months, not weeks. When I was working and being paid bi-weekly, it had this built-in rhythm. Money came in, bills went out, and there was always another paycheck 2 weeks away if I miscalculated. Now, one deposit, 30-ish days, full stop. That takes a lot to get used to, but what I've discovered is it can simplify things enormously if you let it, because you only have to do the math once. When the deposit arrives, I know exactly what's going out, the fixed things, the regular bills, the non-negotiables. For me, those non-negotiables are rent, life insurance, car insurance, medical insurance, Wi-Fi, water, heat, and hydro. Those aren't going to go away. Like they say, it is what it is. What's left is what I have to work with for the month. The negotiables, which includes groceries, supplies for the kiddies, and then the column in the spreadsheet that is most fluid called living. A few things that have genuinely helped me: knowing my fixed number cold. Rent or mortgage, utilities, insurance, subscriptions, everything that's the same every month. I know this number without thinking. It's the foundation everything else is built on. Giving every dollar a job before the month starts. This doesn't have to be a rigid budget, and not all of us are built for rigid budgets, but a fairly accurate plan. Groceries roughly this month, a little for fun, a little set aside for the unexpected. Cut the crap. Plain and simple, cut out anything that really doesn't add value to your life. Because our needs and wants definitely do change. Do you need Apple TV and Netflix and Prime Video, or just one of those streaming services? Do you have to buy books, or can you get them from the library for free? And maybe we decide with friends or family not to exchange gifts anymore, or agree to spend less on gifts and just plan on getting together for cake and ice cream. Honestly, I believe most people would agree to that in a heartbeat. And don't forget those seniors discounts. If you've got to pick up some items at the pharmacy, why not get them on the second Tuesday of the month and get them for 15% less? Truly, when it comes to living on a fixed income, every little bit does help. And also, don't forget that unexpected fund, even if it's just a small one. This was a hard-won lesson from the lean years. Even setting aside a very small amount each month for the things you didn't see coming: the car repair, the vet bill, the appliance that decides it's done. Keeping a little aside changes everything. It's the difference between an inconvenience and a crisis, and the difference between no sleep and a good night's sleep. I suppose this is where my YouTube income comes into play these days when necessary. Having a little fund like this helps just a little bit on those sleepless nights when the what ifs just don't stop yelling at me. There were years, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, where I was working more than one job and still watching the clock until payday. After my second marriage ended and my daughter was in university, and I was trying to keep the boat afloat and build the equity on my home, there was a period of a year when I had 3 jobs, and for 4 years when I had two. It was exhausting, and looking back, I'm not sure how I did it. But I also realize how lucky I was that those 2 jobs could work in tandem, that my day job ended at 4 and I didn't have to be at the evening job till 5. That the evening job, while mentally draining, was not physically draining as my day job was. And even during that time, I was so grateful for the blessing of those 2 jobs. And something that touches me deeply is that both of my children have told me on different occasions how my example deeply affected them and how proud of me they were for digging deep and just doing what had to get done. And to be honest, they're such an inspiration to me. My kids have an amazing work ethic. There was a time my son worked 3 jobs at a time when he was in his 20s, not because he had to, but because he was working towards specific goals. And now, during this time in her life, my daughter holds down 2 jobs, not because she needs to financially, but because they're both wonderful opportunities for her. Anyway, those years of working multiple jobs were exhausting, but they taught me things I couldn't have learned any other way. They taught me that I was more resourceful than I thought, that I could figure things out, that making it work wasn't just a phrase, it was something I was actually capable of. They taught me the difference between what I needed and what I wanted, and that the line between those two things is a lot clearer when the stakes are real, and when that line just doesn't have any wiggle room. And they taught me something I've carried all the way into this chapter of life. Contentment is a skill. It doesn't come automatically. You practice it. Here's something I don't think that gets talked about a lot, at least not in my social circles. A lot of us at this age and stage, even those of us who are okay financially, carry a quiet anxiety about money in retirement. What if something goes wrong? What if I need more than I have? What if I live longer than my money lasts? What I found helpful is separating actual problems from imagined ones. An actual problem is a real shortfall right now that needs addressing. An imagined problem is a catastrophic what if scenario living rent free in my head at 2 a.m. The first one deserves attention and a practical plan. The second one deserves a cup of tea, a deep breath, and a gentle reminder that I've navigated hard things before. When I finally decided it was the right time to sell my house, or when I finally decided it was the right time to retire, those were decisions that I looked at 7 ways from Sunday and replayed every scenario possible in my head. And each had the same result. I was going to be okay. Because here's what I know to be true about me and you, the lovely person watching this video. We have already survived things that we probably didn't think we could. And financial stress may have been the least of those things. And we're still here. We're okay. We figured it out. We figured it out then, and we'll figure it out again when we have to. One of the most liberating things I've ever done with money is also one of the least glamorous. I sat down and I looked at the actual numbers. Not the numbers I wished were there, not a vague, optimistic estimate. The real ones. What's coming in, what's going out, and perhaps most importantly, where it's actually going. Because here's the thing about leaving it to chance. Chance is not a financial plan. Hoping it all works out, assuming it's probably fine, avoiding the bank statement because ignorance feels safer. I've been there and I understand the impulse completely. But the anxiety of not knowing is almost always worse than the reality of knowing. Even when the numbers aren't perfect and even when they tell you something you'd rather not hear, at least now you're dealing with what's real, not what you fear and not what you wish were true. Once you take the guesswork out, something shifts. You stop dreading the numbers and start working with them. And that's where the peace of mind lives, not in having more than enough, but in truly knowing what you have and making a quiet, confident plan around it. So, one payday a month, how do we make it work? A little planning, a little flexibility, a little hard-won wisdom, and the occasional decision to buy the slightly cheaper wine and tell yourself it's just as good. It usually isn't, but we persist. The bigger truth is this: money is rarely just about money. It's about security and freedom and not wanting to be a burden and wanting to feel like we're okay. And most of us, even when things feel uncertain, are more okay than we give ourselves credit for. If any of what I shared today resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments, because I genuinely believe we learn as much from each other as we do from any financial expert. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm really glad you found your way here to this channel. And to my viewers who have been here from the start and continue to bless me with your encouragement and support, thank you. Until next time, take care.